Hello, I am joined with Matt Anderson, Area Director of Greater Milledgeville Young Life in the Milledgeville Chick-fil-A. So I apologize for any background noise, but I hope this microphone reduces it. So I'm going to pass it on to Matt, and he's going to give us a little intro, and then we'll get into the interview.
Thank you, Holland. Yes, I'm Matt Anderson, like you said, and I have lived in Milledgeville, Georgia for the last 2.5 years. We moved here to come on staff with Young Life, and for me to become the area director of Milledgeville. Before that, we were in Buford, Georgia for 3 years, and before that, I spent most of my life up in Northern Virginia, right outside of D.C., in different towns up there. But yeah, we're here, we're loving it, and I'm so excited to be interviewed by you.
Okay, my first question is kind of one I wish I could ask everyone I meet, but it's kind of like, you gotta be chill sometimes. Sort of just like, not your origin story, but is there a story you can think of just off the top of your head that you're like, oh, this is Matt Anderson? Like, whether it's like the way you reacted to a situation or like something you did and you're like, that describes me more than anything else. If you need a second, or if you have a couple. Yeah.
Yeah, I can get into a couple of stories here that'll kind of give you a picture, the moments that made me, if you will. So when I grew up, I'll start off with an elementary school story, and I think you probably have heard this before, but I don't know. But when I was a kid in elementary school, I don't know what recess was like for you, but for me, our recess, we had very defined roles. And for most of, my early recess experiences, 1st through 4th grade, I would be what's called a digger. We would dig holes on the side of the playground, and we worked for like somewhat of a mob boss. It was a girl who was a 6th grader who had braces, and she scared the crap out of me. And so I knew that I needed to find her pretty rocks and bring them to her and earn favor with her, so that one day I could go not just be digging holes at playground, but playing sports with my friends. So once I got out of that toxic relationship in 4th grade, I started my sports journey on the playground. And so I think those years under the strong arm of, I wish I could remember her name. That's the hard thing. But under the strong arm of this tyrant leader of those who dug at recess, they formed me. I think deep down, I view myself as a cog in a machine. Nothing special. But I think that has started to change through my relationship with Jesus, which I'm sure we'll get into later on. But that is probably the early formations of Matt. I think it's important to know also that I grew up in a family, a big family. We're all like Norwegian, big build. Also, I'm one of 5 kids. My mom was a tank. She'd just be pumping out those kids. But yeah, so there's a lot of lore, I think, tied up in that. Growing up in a crowded family, I was the middle child. I had an older brother, an older sister, and then me, and then a younger sister and a younger brother. So there's definitely a lot tied up there. I guess I'll share this story, or I'll just give you a picture of us. We didn't have a lot of money growing up, but my parents loved to get us out of town, go places, and we had to go places on the cheap. And they won a timeshare when we were kids. They won a week-long timeshare that we would inherit for the rest of our life. It was a crazy contest, but we were so thrilled. It was in Orlando, Florida. So in my head, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, we're going to Disney World. It's going to be so great. I'm going to spend all this time at the parks. When in reality, we drove our GMC Suburban with a box TV in the front seat. Not like the pull-down TVs like you have in cars now. Just a box TV that we plugged into the cigarette lighter port. And we watched VHS tapes on the way to Florida. We get to this timeshare, and we never once set foot on a Disney property. We just stayed at the timeshare, played in the pool, and enjoyed our time in metropolitan Orlando. Never made it over to Disney, but we had an excellent time, and we've been back to that timeshare, gosh, lots of times since, and it still remains like one of our favorite places. But my parents worked really hard, and that also, like me growing up, seeing them raise us and try their best to love and care for 5 kids. I think that definitely gave me vision for my life and how I wanted to be as a parent one day. Somebody who worked hard, cared for the kids, and gave them opportunities to have fun but also grow. And so that was super formative, growing up in a big family and a very loving family. My grandmother is a big character in my life. Her name's Erms. That's how I refer to her, as Erms. Irma Dalton, legally. But Erms, we were roommates from 6th grade until right before 9th grade. The house was being renovated, and that took, 3 years. So we shared a bedroom, me, my little brother, and Erms. Some formative years to share a bedroom with your grandmother. But I wouldn't have had it any other way. Because, like, the nighttime stories that came out of that they were just, like, some of my favorite memories. She was just, like, pillow talk queen, Separate beds, of course. Because I'm sure people are scratching their heads wondering what on earth. But yeah, we had a wonderful childhood. Erms was always a part of that. She started off visiting, but then when she moved in 6th grade, that's like some of my favorite times of my childhood, is having her be a part of that and helping raise not only me but all of my siblings. So yeah, Erms is a big piece of that lore. And yeah, that's early childhood. Do you want me to go into like later on, or should we save that?
I mean, if you have some.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, there's different stages, I guess like high school was tough for me. I went through this. I played baseball all growing up and loved that sport, still do. But I had a really difficult coach when I was in 8th grade who was abusive to like all the players, and it was like a really challenging summer for me, because I thought I was going to go and play baseball in high school. I thought I was good. He was the coach of the best team in Virginia for 15 and under. And so I was on that team and felt like really lucky and thought for sure I'd be playing baseball, for a long, long time. But through that, that difficult coach and kind of the whole, the tough things he said to me and a bunch of others, I stopped playing baseball. And then my freshman year, I kind of went into, I think I kind of disappeared into myself. I started letting kind of fear grip me and control my life. And, I didn't talk to like a lot of people in general. I became very shy, which if you know me now, that's not who I am. I love a crowded room of people I don't know. I want to make 100 new friends. That's kind of my attitude. But that wasn't me in high school because of the things that I heard from this coach and then believed about myself. And yeah, I think through high school, I think fear and lies kind of controlled me and who I was. I lied about everything. When people would ask me or try to get to know me, they would never get the straight answer or the truth from me, because I don't think I liked who I was, this picture of myself that I had was pretty unfair. And so rather than tell them what I was really feeling or who I really was, I tell them something fake that I thought they wanted to hear. And that's it's pretty sad, but that was my freshman through my junior year. I had some pretty big lies that I told. Do you want to hear a couple?
If you have some, yeah.
They're horrifying. Okay, so a big thing that I would do, I would lie about injuries, because then I thought people would show that they loved me by the response to me, by feeling sorry or sad for me. Yeah. And so I started off one injury that I said was that I got kicked in the back of the head accidentally by somebody jumping out of a tree.
Right.
Well, then I fell to the ground and acted like I was paralyzed. I wasn't. I could move everything fine, but I was like, oh, this is great. This is my chance for people to show me they love me. Right. And yeah, it wasn't. It was crazy. So that one, I faked a knee injury. I was in a musical my sophomore year, and I wanted people to know that like, oh man, Matt's really pushing through some pain to be part of this musical because it was such high stakes sophomore year, theater class. But I forgot which knee that I said was injured, and so I would like trade off what leg I'd put the knee brace on, and luckily nobody called it out, but I remember thinking back like, oh god, I should have marked it with a pin or something. That was sophomore year. And then the worst one was probably at the end of my sophomore year. I got hit in the head with a football, and I faked that I was blind. And I went to the hospital, and for like 5 days, I just acted like I was blind, I think my sister probably knew that I wasn't. She loved me enough not to like embarrass me and call it out. But pretty much everybody else was like, dang, guess we have a blind son now because he got hit in the head with a football. Crazy. But that's kind of who I was, because I was pretty jacked up from that summer before high school. I think people have like these things that are formative in bad ways in their life, and there are things that happen that are formative in really good ways. So like my family, like I knew who to come back to, right? I knew who I could bring my real self to eventually, was them. But I think that those difficult things that form us and leave scars, that's how they were reflected when I was in high school. It's pretty tough to look back at it, and I laugh about it now, but I remember thinking for years after that I would never be able to tell the truth about those things that I lied about. That's kind of all through high school. Something else I think it's important to know is that throughout my entire childhood, my mom worked at churches. She started a ministry for kids with disabilities at our first church that I remember going to, and it grew to be this massive thing that still to this day it's one of the largest special needs ministries in the country, and people from all over the DC metro area like go and bring their kids to Access Ministries or to Jill's house, and they drop off their kids for whether it's be a church service or they even have overnight care, like respite care for kids. So it's a really sweet thing, remembering being a part of that like as a kid and going to church with them. But I remember as we left that church in middle school and into high school, I remember church kind of shifting in our eyes and feeling like it was more of a requirement than like something fun we did as a family. And that really shaped my view of God, I think, when I was in high school, and how like if I'm not doing all the things on the checklist, then I'm like, he's not going to love me, or he's not going to care about me at all, which is kind of a scary way to look at God, because that's not at all what he's like. But I just kind of remember him like having this picture of him looking over my shoulder with his paper and not being pleased with what he saw, especially when it came to the lies and the life that I was living and the view of myself. But that was all through high school. I mean, we were at church every single Sunday, and the youth pastor at my church, he was probably the only guy there that I actually really liked. I didn't really want to see many other people at church, but I did want to see Steve because he was cool. Steve would show up like at school, a lot like a Young Life leader, like you understand. But he would show up at school. He would, he took us on adventures. Like we would go camping. We would go to summer camp. We'd go to weekend camp together, it never felt fake from him. It just felt pretty authentic and real. And his experience with Jesus and his care for us, like it just was all genuine. And I don't think he ever saw our youth group as like a stepping stone, which I think in the past I'd seen a lot of other youth pastors kind of make us feel like we're kind of an means to an end, like to a pastor job. And so anyways, these are all kind of formative things that in high school came to be. And church was like pretty much like not a big, like I didn't love church, but I really loved Steve. And he kind of comes into play in the college years. Which I guess we can go into now. So I went to college. I wasn't planning on going to college. My senior year, things kind of turned for me. I just decided like, okay, I'm no longer going to lie, but I'm not going to tell the truth about the lies that I told. Right. I kind of decided that summer after that, I was just going to, I was going to get over my fears. I was going to start talking to girls. I was going to start being more confident in myself. And I really did. And I had this idea that like, hey, I'm definitely not made for college. I'm barely going to get out of high school, which I graduated with like a 2.1 GPA when I was in high school. And a lot of that was like because my special ed resource teacher, like, she kind of fibbed on my a lot of my assignments because I didn't do them. So I just thought, I think that the best way for me would be to go into the Marine Corps. And my dad, he worked for the Marines as a civilian, as an engineer. And I thought, well, I'm not going to be an engineer, but I can carry a gun and protect our country, I guess. I don't know. That's just how I viewed it as a high school kid and wanted to serve our country in that way. And my senior year, my sister had gone to Lee University in Cleveland, Tennessee, and she loved it, but she said she would love it more if I was there. And just a little backstory, my older sister, she wanted nothing to do with me in high school. She was battling her own demons. But as a kid, she was really sweet, like an older sister, like really cared for me and all that. But then something happened, I think, in middle school or, early high school. It's adolescence, That's definitely what happened. But she just had this switch flip in her mind. And we never had a close relationship. So when she was gone for college and she called me and said that she wanted me to go to her school, I jumped ship on my whole Marines idea. I applied. I barely got in. I think it's because they were in need of money, and they offered me 0 scholarships, out-of-state tuition, private school, so expensive. But I decided to go to Lee, and all because my sister invited me to go. So I went. My freshman year of college, my first time being in freedom, not having to go to church or have my parents kind of rule my life. I went absolutely bananas. For a guy who never drank or smoked in high school, I did only that. It feels like that freshman year of college. I partied a lot. I got in with the rugby team my first week of college, and that whole crew is wild. They just love a function, and they love beer, and they love, just acting up. And that specific crew, they love to vandalize things. So that was me, my freshman year, and the first semester of my sophomore year. I had gone crazy. I never went to church because my parents didn't make me go. And when they would come and visit, they was I kind of had to act like I was the good boy, from Great Falls that they had this picture of, but secretly I was just being a rascal, full rascal mode. But yeah, that whole first year of college, I was just trying to be somebody completely different than I felt like I had to be growing up. And with that came a lot of hurt, and a lot of scars, and a lot of things that I wish I had never done. Ways that I treated people. I think I had 4 friends at Lee that saw me and cared for me, and they wanted me to know Jesus. They made that abundantly clear. And they consistently showed up in my life, whenever I wasn't at a rugby function, or and those 4 friends, they're the guys that showed up when my life fell apart. And what I mean by that is my sophomore year, I had been partying so much and doing so poorly in my classes that I failed 4 out of 5, outright F fail, not withdrawal, but totally failed. I had been on kind of this string of, I've been high on marijuana for 30 days straight, and I just loved smoking. I hated coming down off of that feeling, and then I would get really scared of the reality of all the things that I wasn't dealing with, and so I'd smoke more and get high again, and that went on for 30 days in November of my sophomore year. And then I had taken something that was laced, and I was it was a scary feeling for me. I thought I was going to die. And I remember calling my mom and being like, hey, I think I need to come home. Something's not right here at school. Do whatever you need to, but get me out of school. And my mom said, got it. Hung up. She called me a week later and was like, hey, yeah, your financial aid didn't go through for next semester, so you can't go back to Lee. I was super mad because I'd kind of forgotten the conversation I'd had with her before. But anyways, I went home after that third semester of college, passing only one class and failing the rest, and just feeling like, oh man, I really blew it, And the crazy thing is, all of my rugby friends, all the people that I partied with, the guys that I smoked that laced weed with, none of them reached out to me. They, I would text, or back in the day we used to message on Facebook, because that's how old I am. They never responded to this day. I don't know where any of them are. I don't know what people are up to. But I think that's good, because the 4 people that did reach out to me and that I'm still in contact with from Lee were those 4 guys who I think, and if I look at it, like, they represent Jesus to me in that time when I really needed him. That was the first time I'd ever felt like I needed something else, truly, because I looked at how destructive my behavior had been, both for me but also for those around me. I looked at how lonely I was, because those who I had invested so much in really wanted nothing to do with me when I was gone. And and so I remember thinking, like, okay, well, there's something about these guys, and there was something about Steve, remember, my youth pastor, and so I was like, I need to ask him what's going on. And so in January of 2012, I went to the church where we had grown up going, or like for high school, and I met with Steve, and he was like, why are you home? You should be going back to school. What's going on? And I was like, well, I just needed to save some money, so whatever. And my youth pastor, who represents Jesus to me, looked at me and he said, hey, why don't you cut the bullshit? And I was like, hey man, I don't think you're allowed to cuss, that's not allowed. And he was like, no, seriously, why are you lying to me? Why don't you tell me what's really going on? And so I told him everything, and was like, surely this man is going to be like, yeah, you're an idiot, I don't want to hang out with you, get out of here. Exact opposite. He was like, finally, I get to know you, Matt. This is exactly who I wanted to know. Why don't you give Jesus a fair shot in your life for the first time ever? And I was like, well, shoot, man, I don't even really know what that looks like. And Steve Robbins led me to Jesus in that day. I gave my life to him, and I've been following him ever since. I think for the first time in my life, in meeting with Steve and him helping correct that image of myself and the image of God that I had made up in my mind, I think that he really he helped me see myself clearly for the first time. He helped me believe that my life was worth living, and that I was valuable and treasured, and I could treat others that way, and that God was the one who saw me that way. Not that inherently I had anything special to myself, but God, because he viewed me that way, because I bared his image, I would have value and purpose and dignity, and that shaped it changed the trajectory of my life, and it shaped me as a man, totally shifted everything for me. I just remember that being a really powerful time. Still kind of rough around the edges. Even today I can still get on rascal mode, I think God loves a rascal, read the Bible, they're all over the place. Getting into Young Life and how that started off in my life. My mom did work for them for a little bit when I was in middle school, and that was really cool looking back. But when I gave my life to Jesus, that was in January of 2012. In April of 2012, my sister's Young Life leaders at the high school that I graduated from decided to leave. Their volunteer leaders, or I guess they were on staff, but they left. There was nobody to take over. My sister said, Matt, you should lead. We got 35 kids signed up for camp. Help me take them to camp, and then you don't have to lead after that. And I said, absolutely not. That sounds dumb. Young Life's for fake Christians. That's kind of what I thought. And then she started crying, and I was like, poop. Okay, fine. Stop crying. I'll help. Whatever. And I volunteer led for. I've been a Young Life leader ever since. So. Yeah, that is kind of the lore, the things that I think have really shaped me from adolescence, and I think the decision to follow Jesus led me to being in full-time ministry. For years I was just a volunteer leader and like grinded and hustled. I worked at coffee shops and Pier 1 Imports, which I think are now closed nationally, which rip, but also like what a lame store in my opinion. I'm sure like a lot of like, other people have.
I don't know if I've ever been to a Pier 1.
Yeah, you've never been to a Pier 1 Imports.
I've seen them.
Yeah, you might have seen commercials for them, but like it's just like an interior store, but like I just remember all the stuff being like, this is really ugly, and I would build furniture for them, and then when they told me to sell pillows, I was like, no, I'm out. But I would like work these side jobs and work with a general contractor, and those are some good years. But I would make I'd make as much money as I could, and then I would try to like spend it on Young Life kids, like going to lunches or going to camp, giving scholarship money where it was needed, whatever. And that was like a really fun season of my life, just being a volunteer, working these side jobs to do that, and then started working at a church, and about 5 years into my walk with Jesus, started working with middle school kids at a church. When they offered me that job, I was like, I don't think middle school kids have brains, like why would I ever do that? And I took that job because my dad was like, hey man, you're making like $12 an hour maximum right now, but this job will give you like benefits and it'll help you grow, administratively and professionally, and like it lets you do what you love, and you get paid to do what you love. I'm like, okay, sick, you're right. So I took the job. Turns out I love middle school kids. Like, they are incredible. Such a difficult time, and you heard it in my story. Like, middle school was so challenging for me, and there's such a need for adults to step into the lives of middle school kids and like say that, hey, like, you are valuable, like, you are amazing, and like your voice is worth being heard. And like, just people showing up and saying that, like, no, I love you, like, as you are. Middle school kids need that. And so I learned that through my time working at the church as the director of their middle school ministry there. And this is really important, because I think the person who shaped me most in my life is my wife, Stacy. So right before I started working at the church, in 2014, she's gonna punch me if that's not the right year. I think it's the right year, 2014.
I can always edit it in.
Yeah, no, that's so good. Yeah, we might have to fix that in post. But Stacy, so I was a volunteer leader in 2014. At that point, I was actually working at Pier 1. That's like, I know that. And hated it. I had dated a girl the year before for a little while, but like, she was significantly older than me. She wanted to get married. I was still somewhat of a rascal and was like, no chance. So I broke up with her, and like that went so poorly. It's another story for another time, for another interview, but it's so brutal. So I was like, I guess I'll just never date again, and it'll be me and Jesus, and that'll be it. And then at like probably a year after that breakup, I was like, no, this is actually great. I don't ever need to date. I'm like so satisfied. Like, I feel like I'm growing with the Lord, and I told God, I'm like, if it's me and you forever, that's great. I don't need anything else. And then 2 months after I said that to him, Stacy walked into my backyard. She was from Northern Virginia originally. Her family had moved to Georgia that summer. So like cruel, so rude of God to do that. But she had moved to Georgia that summer, and she was back visiting, and my sister and her went to college together. So she came to our backyard to play volleyball, and I met her for the first time and was like, who is Stephanie's friend? Hello. It's a long story, but I'll give you some just quick highlights. That summer, that night, we were like, hey, we're going to go take 500 kids to the beach with our church. Not the church that I worked for, but a different church. And we desperately need some girl volunteers. Would you go? And she was like, yeah, totally. I'm going to drive back to Georgia, 9 hours, pack my beach stuff, like my swimsuits and whatever, and then drive back, and I'll catch the bus with y'all in Myrtle Beach. And I was like, that's insane. But I was like, that's really cool. She's not just like, pretty, but like she's, she loves the Lord so much that she would drive all that way just to tell kids about him. And so I was sold. Right. And then as God would have it, we got back from Beach Week. I'm like still in love. Nobody knows except for my little brother. He knew. Bubs is like my best friend, so like I told him. And Bubs is my little brother, just for those listening. But we come back from Beach Week, and like a couple of weeks we were going to take our kids to Young Life Camp up at Lake Champion in New York. My area was going, but also so was Stacy's and Stephanie's. So both of our areas, as God would have it, would go to New York, and that's when I was like, I got to do something about this girl. She had this whole time like totally like ignored me, wasn't giving me any attention. It's fine. I'm not mad about it because we're married now. What's up? And yeah, I just like told her after that trip, and I was like, hey, can I write you letters? She's going to go to summer staff after that. It's like when you serve at a Young Life camp for a month. So she went to Crooked Creek the day after we got back from camp, and I was like, I'm going to write you letters every day. And I did. And when she got back, I was like, let's go out, and we did. We went on a date in D.C., and then, our next date, we made things official, and we've been dating ever since. Got married in 2017 on June 3rd. I don't know why I made that seem like it was an important date to you. It is to me, but yeah, she has been the most like impactful person in my life. We're building a life together, and we have brought a beautiful baby boy into the world, Jack, who's about to turn 1 year old on December 12th. It's huge. It's huge. He's so old. He's got 7 teeth. He is the cutest baby on the planet, although he didn't win Baby of the Year.
It's just rigged.
It is rigged, and it's a lot of people have told me that it's fake. So for those listening, if you I don't know why I keep saying that, but if you think that Baby of the Year is fake, let Holland know, and she'll let me know. Whatever. But yeah, it's basically the worst contest ever because they got it wrong. Jack is the Baby of the Year, in my opinion, and I think in the opinion of others.
Baby of the Year because he's like decade,
Baby of the decade or millennium?
Yeah, for sure.
Is it millennium? No, millennium. Millennium. Okay, good. One thing you'll know about me is that I don't know words. Yeah. A lot of words. I know some words. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's pretty much, I think that's the lore. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of that, I'm pretty long-winded. We're probably 3 hours into this.
About 30 minutes.
Oh, about 30 minutes. Okay, good. So we're not over the time. Okay.
Pretty good standing.
Okay, good. But I feel like that's a good background. I guess maybe I should talk about the move from Virginia to Georgia. Would that be?
Yeah.
Because then I feel like that's pretty formative years. Okay, so a couple of things. I love my time leading Young Life as a volunteer. When I got married to Stacy in 2017, I decided, it's been a grind. I want to leave space. Like I all of my time, was spent like running after kids. And I realized that, like, if I'm going to be a good husband, I need to have some space, some time for my wife. And, like, I just want to be home and, like, make her dinner, or, like, she works as a nurse in labor delivery. And I was pretty sure that, like, I couldn't do both Young Life and work at the church. And so I stopped leading Young Life for a short time. I would still show up, like, and hang out with my kids, but I just wouldn't do club or go to camp with them. But, yeah, I'd go to all their stuff, and that was my compromise. It's like, okay, I'll just be the friend, but I won't do like the Young Life T-shirt stuff, And yeah, that was a sweet time. Just getting to like take a step back from that and like really miss it. So for our first 3 years of marriage, we lived in Northern Virginia. About year 2. We both felt separately this like kind of stirring in our heart. I don't even know how to describe it, but it's just kind of like this uneasiness maybe. That's probably not the right adjective. But yeah, we just felt like that we were supposed to go somewhere. And I think the longer that we prayed about that, and and this is all separate, like we had never talked about it, but I think I decided that like I felt that the Lord had just kind of steered me to think that like maybe we should move closer to her family, who had moved to Wilburn, Georgia, in 2012, the summer that we met. So I was like really nervous to bring that up because we had lived in Northern Virginia most of our life, and that was home. That was where all the connections were. That's where I had spent at that point, 8 years, in ministry there, something like that. I don't know, but a long time. And So I told Stacy, I'm like, I think we need to move to Atlanta to be closer to your family. And she was like, tell me why I've been praying about and feeling that same thing for like the last few months. So then I was like, oh, shoot, I got to tell the church. And so we had prayed about when to do that. We told the church a year before we would leave, but hey, we don't know when, but we think we need to move to Georgia to be closer to Stacey's family. They were like, excellent, we're not going to fire you, but we could, but we're not going to. And I was like, thanks, appreciate that. But for that last year, we got ready and tried to consider, like, okay, well, what are we going to do? What am I going to do? I don't really want to work for another church because I don't want to compare it to the one that I had worked at. And yeah, because that was like that church had really restored my faith in church, like as a whole. I thought that like Jesus was just like a thing that was relational to like just people individually. Just didn't really buy into the whole church idea. But then that church that I worked at was like, oh no, this is a good thing, you know. And so yeah, I didn't want to work for a church, wanted to work for Young Life. But was like, I don't even think they would hire me because I hadn't graduated from college. What's up? Yeah, so we moved to Georgia. I applied to work for Young Life. In my first conversation, the guy told me, we usually don't hire people from outside the region because we don't know them. And I was like, poop. Like that's the job that I want, but I'm not going to get. And then they rolled the dice with me, I guess, and they said, okay, like we'll give you an interview. And then I did the interview. And then they were like, okay, you're moving to Buford, Georgia. And I was like, what the heck is Buford? You know, I'd never heard of it. I was like, is that Atlanta? And they're like, kind of, but not really. It's a suburb of Atlanta. So I thought like a farm town, you know, tractors and stuff. I mean, Buford has the Mall of Georgia. It's like huge. I mean, the high school there, you know, you're from there. But it's like Buford University. Best football program in the state. I'm sure other people would argue otherwise, but like historically it's pretty rock solid. And they'd be, you know, recruiting kids from all over the country. They won't say that, but I will. But yeah, it's I was like, okay, let's go. And that started my staff journey with Young Life. I trained under a guy named Greg Alexander, a guy you know very well, and a guy that we both love. Amazing man. He really taught me a lot about the Lord, which I think that's the thing I'm most grateful for about Greg is he helped me realize that like this whole Young Life thing, like it's just it's not the most important thing about my life. Sometimes it feels like it needs to be, but he made Jesus, like, no matter what we were doing with Young Life, Jesus was always lifted up higher than Young Life and that mission. And so yeah, I'm sure there's going to be some background noise on this. I'm certain.
I'll isolate something.
Yeah, it'll be great. This is going to be so good. Well, yeah, I was trained by Greg. Had 3 amazing years in Buford. Some really hard things happened. Some really good things happened. And I just grew a lot. Yeah, that's when I met Holland originally. Both of your parents, well, your mom was on staff first with Capernaum, and then your dad.
Yeah.
Love your parents. That's how I met them originally first. And I heard your name a lot, but I never met you until we went to camp at Sharp Top
2021.
in 2021. What a time. Yeah, that was a hot summer. It was crazy. We had a good group go to camp. I brought Buford boys. There's only 2 times we went to camp with Buford boys in its history. One with me and one with Paul, the guy who was there before. Both times were chaos, and those boys were rascals. But you know, a lot of them met the Lord that summer. And one of them was texting me this morning about you know, what he's reading in the Bible right now. But yeah, so we went to camp, became homies. The hike on Sharp Top was not it. I wish I didn't do it. And I remember being there and us being like, I think one of the girls went on the wrong trip that week. We don't have to unpack that, but It was a crazy week. But I just remember that clearly being like, what a fun time. Why is my phone blowing up right now? But yeah, went to summer camp with them. And yeah, my last year in Buford was really probably the most difficult and the most special. It's one of the more challenging things that you can go through as a Young Life leader is we had one of our kids die in a car accident on the way home from a Young Life event. His name was Aaron, and a week before he had come to club and had given his life to Jesus. Like after it was, I'd known him for 3 years and never expected. He was also a rascal. He was doing a lot of crazy things, and then decided something was missing, and that thing was Jesus. And a week after he decided to follow him and give his life to the Lord, he died in that car accident. And I think that that was both really really beautiful that God wrote this story that way, but also made it really, really hard for me. It's just hard to lose a friend that you've run after for 3 years and that you love, and see them die too young, from my perspective. And so that was really, really hard. But I felt the Lord's presence in that. I was never denied that. It was crystal clear that He was with me in it, and the number of kids that decided to follow Jesus too because of Aaron and his life, and how God really did just shape the trajectory of his eternity in that last week. It was amazing to watch, but it was really, really hard, and it really brought into question, hey, is this what I want to do full time? Because the last year, the third year of your staff associate training as a Young Life staff person, they either offer you a job to be an area director or do something kind of similar to that, or that's it. There's not a lot of other options, just to stay where you are, because that's the program that you sign up for. And so that year it was confirmed for me that I wanted to be in this full time. I saw the importance of it, and I just wanted kids to know Jesus. I knew how important it was for not just their life here on earth, but for their life eternal. And so I told the region I'm in, let's do this. Thought for sure I was going to stay in Buford because my boss Greg, our friend, he was moving to Roswell, his hometown. And I was like, all right, great. I guess I'll be the area director of Buford. Wrong. They sent me to Milledgeville, and I had no idea what this town looked like, or I'd never been here. I'd heard about it because friends of mine had gone to Georgia College, but certainly had no idea. Had no intent. I had never led Young Life with a college-age leader ever in my life. I was like, what the heck? Why are you going to send me to a place full of college leaders? Right. But I was prayed about it with Stacy. Was made very clear to me by the Lord that no, this is where we got to go. It doesn't make any sense other than the Lord calling us here, because none of our family live here. It's an hour and a half to her family. We had never heard of this town. The town itself, the only draw for us is to come and work for Young Life. And so, but we have seen God been really kind to us through all the things that He brought into our life here. One, getting to see ministry on such a large scale. Young Life here goes to, in Milledgeville, it's 10 different ministries. 1 Capernaum ministry, 5 high school ministries, 4 middle school ministries. We send 2 teams down to Sandersville, both to high schools there. And I'm always shocked when I think about how many college students have signed up to give their life away, to run after kids with the hope of Jesus. And it's just changed my whole life. I've loved it. I've learned a lot, and I have so much more to learn about leading college students, because one, college was a long time ago for me, and it didn't go so well, if you remember. But two, y'all are different than I was when I was in college, and I'm learning what it looks like to be a leader of y'all, and I love it. I love the challenge, and I love that I get to hear y'all's stories, see you guys in action, and be a part of how God is shaping each of you into a reflection of who He is. And so, I love it here. Me and Stacey never thought we'd live in a small town, and we didn't think we'd be small town people, but we totally are. it makes us like value the little things more, and it makes us cherish our time with our family as much as I miss them, and I miss them a lot. I really do. That's the hardest part about being here. But it makes me cherish time with them and not let it be taken for granted. And so all of this is like really growing me and shaping me, and we love it here. I don't know how long we'll be here. I don't know what that time frame looks like, but I'm thankful for every minute of it. And yeah, that's Milledgeville. Oh, we had our baby almost a year ago. Me and Stacey. Should I tell you the lore of that too?
I feel like a little.
Yeah, I'll give you a little background. So like, when I was growing up, I thought that like babies just happened for everybody, right? We have found out, without getting into the nitty gritties, that it would be really difficult for Stacey to have babies. It's just a condition that she had, and I'm finding out that's way common. Like, a lot of girls have a hard time getting pregnant and having children. I got some friends that they just look at each other and they get pregnant. It's like so lame. But like, we, for years and years, really wanted to have kids, and we're unsure if that was going to be able to happen. And a year before we had a year before we had gotten pregnant with Jack, Stacey had a big surgery to help make that possible and to remove like a big tumor that needed to be removed. And so that happened and went super well. And then I found out about, 9 months later that Stacey was pregnant. Yeah. And we were thrilled. And like, the first thing we thought of was like, or one of the first things we thought of was like, I can't wait to tell all of our college friends about it. Because it's going to be all of our baby, and that's what it's felt like ever since. We went through that pregnancy. Stacey had a really smooth pregnancy, thank God. And on December 12th, she went in for a C-section, and my favorite little guy in the whole world was born. He's incredible. Being a dad has like totally consumed me. I love it, and yeah, it's just like the best thing ever. I like would never want to do anything else with my time other than like raise that kid. I'm thinking about quitting my job just to be full-time dad. Stacey doesn't want me to do that though. Need that money. We love Jack. We love getting to raise him. He like laughs. He said "mama" for the first time yesterday. I don't know if it's like on repeat, but he repeated it back to Stacey. Like, I don't know if it's ingrained in his brain, but we got him to say it like a couple of times. And so just like little things like that, we're like, let's go. Yeah, the first time he crawled. He pulled himself up on the couch the other day too, which I was like, bro's standing up now. He tried to stick his finger in the electrical outlet, but it's a big milestone, and so I was like, let's not do that. But yeah, he's amazing. I really love that kid, and his birthday is going to be a banger. I'm very excited for his birthday party, and just to see him in a little baby birthday hat. Yeah. Stacey's buying him one, so. But yeah, that is kind of all of our lore. I think I'm sure there's plenty more I could talk about, but like, I think I've given a good glimpse into the past.
Like, if you really knew me, you'd know.
A little bit. If you really knew me, you'd know. Yeah, that's right. I'm gonna hand the phone back to Holland for questions.
I do have one question pertaining to Jack. It's like a story I know you've told, but looking more at like traditions you have, there's of course like everyone has their traditions, but I think one that comes to mind that you've told me about is how you read a verse to him every night. And I know there's a story behind it, but let's hear it.
Yeah.
And how that came to be.
Okay, so Stacey is the best mom in the world, and she's like, before Jack's even here, she's like, we need to pick a theme verse. And like this, once we decided that his name was going to be Jack, we looked up what that means, and it means that God is gracious. I also think that like several other names mean that. And
my name means that.
Yeah, mine means gift from God, and I'm like, I just think that they're just saying nice. Like, I don't think this is.
I think someone named Matt came up with that.
Somebody came up with that, yeah. But we're good. We love that because I think that Jack is an example of God's graciousness to me and Stacey, so it's like totally fitting. But something we decided that we wanted to do is have kind of a verse that Jack would grow up always knowing. And that verse for us is Psalm 103, verse 8, which says that the Lord is compassionate and gracious, slow to anger and abounding in love. And we have said that verse to him every single night before bed, and we pray with him. And I take time, as much time as I can, before he falls asleep, to just kind of recap that day. Hey, what are all the ways that God's been gracious to us? It might be like, today for me, I got to have a conversation with Holland at Chick-fil-A, and I ate a chicken biscuit and a chicken burrito, and that was just all grace, all of that. I didn't deserve any of that, but I got it. God is gracious to us, and not just giving us a home, but a home that we love, that has space for everybody. And God is gracious to us because he's given us a town that we have grown to love and filled it with friends. God has given us people that care about us in our life. And, so we just try to recap those things with Jack before bed. We sing to him, Sometimes he doesn't want to hear it, and he'll start crying, and so we'll just lay him down, and he puts himself to sleep. But every single night, no matter what, we love to remind him of the truth that God is gracious. He's compassionate. He's slow to anger. He's abounding in love. All of those things I think are super important for us to know, because I think if we don't know that, if we're not repeated that, or if we're not told that repeatedly, we can forget it. Like me in high school, in middle school, I just thought God was often pretty disappointed or mad at me, that because I kept messing up and I kept acting in a bad way, he would become angry with me, and I felt like he was going to punish me, but instead he treats me with grace. He doesn't just not punish me, being merciful, but he's gracious. He gives me abundant life with him. And so I think it's all those things, it's important for Jack to know. I don't want him to ever go a day without knowing that about God and experiencing that, which are two different things. So right now we're just working on the know it. And then I think as we grow together as a family, I know that God will, he'll let us experience that in many ways. And so we'll try to remind each other of those ways as we go to bed. It's a fun little tradition, but that's kind of that's our nighttime routine with Jack. Of course, after a bath time, which is the best ever. I don't think adults should take baths. That's just gross. There's so much grime. And you're all in that water. But babies in bath time is the sweetest and most fun thing. Jack loves it. And yeah, it's just it's probably my most pictured and filmed thing on my phone is bath time shenanigans with Jack. And he has these cute little towels that one of them's a lamb, one of them's a shark.
It has a little hood.
Yeah, it's got a little hood, and he really hates. We give him some lotion before bed so his skin doesn't dry out, and putting on his pajamas. Hates that. Loves being naked. Loves being in the water. Hates pajama time. But we bring it back home with a bottle and prayer, and reading of the scripture. So. Yeah, that's long story for your question that I could have answered really quickly, but yeah. So here you go. Any more questions?
I do have one more. I hope that didn't hurt anyone's ears. As you mentioned, you've spent many a time at Young Life Camp. I feel like ritual is not the right word. It's textbook definition, that's right, but it's such it has a negative connotation, almost like routine. That has become so important to me of a 15 minutes. And you've had many of those, just doing assignments, taking kids to camp. Would you say that's I don't know how to word this question. Because in one way it could be so invasive to be so what does your 15 minutes look like? But do you think that's I know for me that was a rite of passage for me. I knew about it growing up because my family my sisters all did it when they went to camp, but do you feel that is, and even a Young Life kids first say so, or the rite of passage of giving their life to Jesus, what does that look like for you and your life?
That's a great question. And so for everybody who's wondering what is the 15 minutes, let me start off here. At Young Life Camp, we hope to share the entirety of the gospel with kids. So we start off on page 1 of the Bible with creation. We talk about how God created man and woman with great intention and in his image, and how all of us bear the image of God in our lives, have purpose and value and dignity, and because of that, because we are image bearers. Like we're all individual, specific reflections of who God is, just by being alive. You know, we go through that and how like on page 2 or 3 of the Bible, like it says that that man, you know, has decided to not live in the way that God has given us to, that has called us to live. A lot of that is because sin has distorted the way that we view ourselves and view God, and we would choose to follow our own way rather than His. And you know, we tell the whole story of the gospel and how like we have a need in our heart for that relationship with God. It's how we were made, and you know, God is part of a trinity of 3 persons who make up the one God, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. We were made for community in the same way, to be in relationship with Him and to be in relationship with one another. And so we explain that to kids, and how sin has kind of, you know, distorted that, and has made us enemies of one another, has made us feel like God is far away and that He doesn't love us and doesn't care for us. But then we share the truth about Jesus, and that like, hey, God isn't far away. He's not angry with us. He actually sent His Son here to rescue us. We tell the story of Jesus' life here on earth, and ultimately how He would take on our sin after living a perfect life, and he would die in our place, which is what the Bible says, that not following God is a ticket to die, and not just to die, you know, a death that everybody dies, but to be away from Him and apart from Him forever. But Jesus took on that punishment and took on that for us. He died in our place so that we could have the choice to choose to live with God forever or not. And we talk about how Jesus was resurrected 3 days later, and how He wants to raise us to life with Him. And so we tell this whole story of the gospel throughout a week at Young Life Camp. And after we hear about what Jesus did, how He died on the cross for us, Young Life staff, like the speaker, gives us an opportunity to have 15 minutes alone to process all they've heard about Jesus, about us, about how those two have intersected, and how you know, Jesus would lay down His life for us, not as a victim, but as a choice to give us the option to be in relationship and right relationship with God. And so in those 15 minutes, for 13 years this summer, I'll have been at camp just about every summer, experiencing those 15 minutes. Sometimes as an assigned team member, like a staff person who's there, and you get to see one each week, which is really sweet. But kids go out into camp, all the lights are turned off. It's like all of the heavens light up. I don't know how most times it feels like this. There's like perfect weather for these nights. The skies are clear, and you can see every star in the sky. But yeah, they're given 15 minutes to process and respond to the gospel. And all of camp is silent. These kids are everywhere, spread out. And it never gets old. I have never once been in that 15 minutes and just kind of breezed through it. Because I really think that it's in those 15 minutes, it's in our response, it's in our pondering about who this Jesus is and what we believe about Him. Is he the Lord that He says He is? Has He made something up? Is He a liar? You know, like is he who He says He is or not? You know, and then responding to Him, inviting Him into our life. I think that is how I talked about earlier, how Aaron, his eternity shifted. My friend who passed away in a car accident. I think our eternity shifts when we decide if Jesus is who He says He is, and that's what happens in the 15 minutes. It's really important and really powerful. I think everybody deserves a chance to, and a space to consider who Jesus is. It's the most important thing I think you can consider, because nobody's going to argue that Jesus didn't exist. I mean, he's a real person. But the question comes into, well, is he God? And is what He did enough for me to be made in right relationship with His Father? So the 15 minutes never gets old. I've seen so many of them. I often will just not even think about the kids who are experiencing that, but I like to go back to where I was. If you're back in my story, like loster than an Easter egg, you know, and I just think about how God rescued me in that time. and how he showed up in my life in a powerful way since and has given me this beautiful life. I think about how Jesus dying on the cross is the power that made that life possible for me. And every time I get those minutes, that chance to think about it, I thank God for it. Because I don't know where I'd be right now. Surely not Milledgeville. But I think that's been the most powerful thing that's ever happened in history, for me at least. 15 minutes is really sweet, and I think that did you ask about other things? Say so.
Say so, and kind of just like the rite of passage of like someone giving their life to Christ.
Yeah. So no, it's really good. I think something that is really beautiful about Young Life Camp is they're given the space to process the gospel, like I said, in the 15 minutes, but also in cabin time with their leaders. And a lot of people, after hearing the gospel clearly and share with them in a way that is true and phrased, like I said, clearly and in language that is understandable to a high school and middle school kid, I think that they respond to that, and a lot of kids choose to follow Jesus. They want to give their life to him and take part in the relationship that God offers them. And so there's this thing called Say So, the last day of camp, where if kids have decided to follow Jesus, they get an opportunity to stand up at the end of camp and say so in front of everyone. In the Psalms, I think there's this psalm that says, "Let the redeemed of the Lord say so." That's where we get that phrasing from, and so we have kids stand up and say so, and it's always one of the most powerful things, because especially when you're on the assigned team, or if you've led kids in a cabin all week, kids will stand up and say that, like, "Hey, my name is Alex. I'm from Milledgeville, and this week I decided to give my life to Jesus." And it's kind of like a timestamp, It's like a declaration for a kid to say, "This is where it started for me," or in this context, I've chosen to follow Jesus. I think that Young Life Camp is a special place where that happens often. It's everything that we do is at camp is to set up the gospel and to share that with the kid, from the activities that we do and the ways that the speaker can even use those activities as examples, and to the talks that they give, to the storyline of the skits. All of that is used to share the gospel with kids. And so, of course, there's a lot of opportunity for us to give a kid a chance to have that rite of passage, as you described, that opportunity to stand up and say so. But something that I think I love most about Young Life is not even that, but the fact that the leaders get on the bus with kids and they go home with them. Because some kids might hear that and be like, "I don't want it, actually. I'm good. Kind of life is going well for me without it." But I think that the most important thing about Young Life is that the relationship with a Young Life leader doesn't just happen at camp or in the context of camp. It's a really beautiful thing that happens, but they actually come home with kids, and they continue to process with them. For those who have chosen to follow Jesus, a Young Life leader walks with them as they grow in their faith, and shows them what it looks like to follow him at home, not just in the context of a fun Young Life camp. But also for the friends who decide that they don't want that, a Young Life leader continues to show up and say, "God hasn't changed his mind about you. He still feels the same way. Even though you said no, he still says he wants you. I'm going to continue to be a living, breathing example of that to you as your friend and as your Young Life leader." And so that's probably the more powerful than all the things that happen at camp, is the stuff that happens at home and the representation of that. But yeah, that's kind of how to explain all of that. Yeah, does that answer your question? You feel good about that? Excellent. Do you have any more questions?
That's all I really got.
Wow. Well, this has been a wonderful opportunity to just gab. I've got the gift of gab, if you don't know. And thank you, Holland. I hope that you get an A+ on your project, and thank you for letting me share my story with you.
Of course. Thank you. That's all I got.